Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you on this bright, sunny summer Wednesday. Low 80s, 97% humidity. Boston's never-ending summer. Quite a bit of boxes in the mail today, but as you can see, I am engaged in my usual fight with the light. It's the fella from Manila. It's the fight with the light. I've noticed that between 7 and 7:16 in the morning, the light is perfect here at Hyde Cottage, and otherwise, suddenly, since the time shift that we had, we lost an hour, the light is terrible all the time. It's either St. Paul in a blinding white nimbus on the road to Damascus, or it's so dim and dark that I would be robbing you of the full plenitude of my sexiness. So instead, here in the little book room, I am just sort of hiding around the room in corners to try and find the right light. We'll have to hope it lasts at least through this video. And the boxes in the mail weren't the only thing. Of course, there were also periodicals. I've got a bunch of periodicals here, including the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. Big broadsheet newspaper. Look at how beautiful that photo is. That is just lovely. What is that, a young person on their phone? You're on your phone? Message in a bottle, no more. That's the caption on the photo, because it's a young, skinny-jeaned hipster surrounded by the glories of Martha's Vineyard, a beautiful island off the coast of Massachusetts. And what's he doing? He's scrolling on his phone. But in this particular issue of the Vineyard Gazette, of course, the number one attraction will be, as always, the 3 columns at the back. All outdoors, bird news, and especially the Vineyard Gardener. With all these photos. These aren't pulled from the wire. These are people, either the writers of the columns taking these photos or people sending them in. That'll be the highlight of this issue, because this issue does not have a review by yours truly. Sometimes it does. We're in the off season, so my editor is not getting books. He's not getting the usual flow of books. I keep pestering him. Then another thing that came in the mail was the TLS. The London Times Literary Supplement, the single greatest literary journal in the English-speaking world, which has a number of interesting things in it. There are some reviews, including a review of the new Claire Tomlin biography, Young H.G. Wells. That will be very interesting. But also a review of that book that we saw just yesterday, Andrew Pettigrew and Arthur de Wedderwin's book, The Library. Gets a nice long review in the TLS. There's also stuff in the letters page. A person writes in about E.M. Forster. The TLS just recently had an excellent article by Peter Parker on Morris, the explicitly gay novel that E.M. Forster wrote and did not publish in his lifetime. And it got a letter that I'm wondering, letters from New York, and I'm wondering what it's going to make people think. I'm wondering if it's going to get a response. It goes like this. I'm sure that Peter Parker was right to reject the contention that E.M. Forster actually disapproved of homosexuality, a notion that has the air of an undergraduate paradox. But matters are perhaps more complex than Parker allows. Why is it that Morris's Alec had to be of a different and lower social class? Or that Forster's 2 great loves, Mohammed el-Abdil and Bob Buckingham, were both of much lower status than he was himself, even though Forster knew many middle-class homosexuals. It could, of course, be argued that in pre-Wolfenden Britain, that's the famous Wolfenden Report from 1957 that said, maybe what adult men do in private, totally consensual between the two of them, ought not to be a crime, not to be punished by jail or even worse. It could be argued that in pre-Wolfenden Britain, the only way a middle-class gay man such as Morris could safely find a sexual relationship was with a guardsman, policeman, or gamekeepers. But Morris is fiction and a wish-fulfillment dream. Is it not then possible that on an unconscious level, Forster found sex with men degrading as well as pleasurable, which would scarcely be surprising in view of his intensely prim upbringing? That's a quote from Furbank's biography, which I just recently scandalously realized I didn't have, so I found a copy. And notwithstanding the fact that he was unusually free from class prejudice, his upbringing made it virtually impossible for him to engage in the degradation of a social equal or superior. Hence, Forster, like many other homosexuals of his own and the next generation, never or very seldom had sex with a member of his own social class. Very interesting stuff. That noise you heard was the being she's over on the bed staring at me. Suddenly we're not wedged next to each other, and that's bothering her. That's a very interesting letter. You can the author of the letter comes from New York, but doesn't give any specializations. But the author does believe, as so many people do in the 21st century, in ineradicable blood guilt. A notion that you really wanted to think had gone with the dodo. But no, the notion of eradicable blood guilt is back. And it's not only back, but it is a requirement. It's a hiring requirement in America academia. So I'm guessing that the letter writer comes from academia. You can see it in this letter in the fact that no matter what E.M. Forster does, no matter how much thought he devotes to the subject, no matter how much soul-searching he does, he has ineradicable blood guilt. If any member of his socioeconomic, ethnic, skin color, class, or whatever ever had a fault, he has it too. It's just a part of his genetic makeup, and he can't get away from it. He might be able to get away from it on conscious levels, but not unconsciously. It'll still crop up because blood guilt tells all. Except, I can't help but notice, in the people doing the writing who never inculcate themselves in any kind of blood guilt. There's also an interesting article on the back of the TLS. I'll keep you updated on whether or not was E.M. Forster a self-hating gay? Generates mail in the letters column. It'd be wonderful if it did. This would actually be one instance in which the author under discussion, Peter Parker, I would welcome him to write in. Usually I say no, an author should absolutely not, under any circumstances, do that. But this is not a comment on a review of one of Peter Parker's books. He wrote an editorial, which is all opinion. So he's perfectly free to respond. I hope he does. But there's also an article here, very interesting for you rare book collectors out there. Apparently, recently something came to auction that was Henry IV Part 1 by Shakespeare. But it fetched an enormous amount of money because apparently it was cut out of a first folio and sold separately. And the TLS wonders... let's see here. In any case, we can now dream of embarking on a hunt for all 36 folio plays in fragment form. Each to be purchased at a going rate that would eventually enable the reconstruction of a complete collection of sorts for almost a tenth of the price of the collector Stephen Lowenthal paid for an actual complete first folio last year, which was almost $10 million for a complete Shakespeare first folio. Almost $10 million paid at auction. But that sounds like a lot of legwork and still rather a lot of fundraising. Never mind. And I don't believe that. I am sure that there are many people out there who, now that they know that at least one collector carved up a first folio into individual plays and either had them individually bound or whatnot and started selling them individually, circulating them around individually, now that the collecting world knows that, I bet the hunt is on for those individual plays. Well, how horrifying. I keep waiting. I know that the whereabouts and provenance of every Shakespeare first folio that is currently extant is known down to the last micron, but nevertheless, I keep hoping for a new Shakespeare first folio to appear. We always think they won't because we think the number one place where they would have ended up would have been in the country estates that have since come under the purview of the National Trust. But plenty of country estates, as we've seen on this channel, plenty of country estates have not. And plenty of them have gone to ruin. And they're not the only, England isn't the only country where wealthy English people made English country estates, where they made English country houses. They made them wherever they were. I keep hoping that another first folio will come to light. That would be great. But there's one more periodical that we got in the mail. It's this month's issue of Smoke Signals. Big Canoe News in northern Georgia. A gigantic full-color paper. Just a beautiful, beautiful paper. Let me show you an example of what the graphics people at Big Canoe do. There's an article here on Project Chimps, which gives new beginnings to chimps that were used for the whole of their lives in laboratory research. And in addition to photographs of the chimps reacclimating to grass under their feet or to not being subjected to all sorts of horrific procedures, there's also a gallery of the chimps as people. So you know who they are. You can look at their faces and know who they are. Just incredible. And that kind of full-color graphic runs throughout this paper. I swear, the graphics in this paper are as good as anything that you will find in any major newspaper. And one thing that you will find with those graphics, the back section of the news part, which is the front of the paper, is an absolutely glorious 2 full-page spread of books coverage. This is not part of the art section. The art section is separate. This is books, all by itself, books. a new review of The New Ken Follett, a new review of that library book that we just mentioned, a new review of the new biography of King George by Andrew Roberts, a long, detailed review of that little history of life on Earth, and a column by yours truly on forthcoming books for the month of November. This is your November books coverage in Big Canoe News, and it is, in my humble opinion, not only is it beautiful, I mean, can I say enough about this? Look at the book icon up top there. The grayscale of the shadowed pages is rendered. That is just incredible. That is just amazing. It's full of images to go with the deathless prose. And I want to point out here two things. Number one, two things that I pointed out before, but where would you be on this channel if I weren't pointing out things I've already pointed out? But the thing number one is that I honestly believe, just looking at that, not alone reading it, but reading it, it really is the proof in the pudding. I honestly believe that this is the best freestanding book section. So not a book review in an art section, but a section devoted to books. I honestly believe this is the best freestanding book section in any American print newspaper anywhere in the Deep South. I would be willing to bet, mainly because of testimony from a lot of you spread out all over the country, that it's the best small newspaper books coverage anywhere in the country. Not just the Deep South, but anywhere in the country. The only reason I started saying it was the best books coverage in the Deep South is because if I say just the South, instead of specifying the Deep South, I have to contend with the Washington Post, which has been around the block. So it has a wee bit more money at its disposal than Big Canoe News. Nevertheless, this is not anything to miss, in my humble opinion. I admit, I'm biased, but this is not anything to miss. This is a serious, real book section. And that leads to the second thing that I've mentioned many times, which is you are free to subscribe to Big Canoe News. They put the whole of the paper as a digital format online with no paywalls, but you are free to subscribe and get the full tactile glory of this great color setup. And a big book section with pieces fit to be clipped out, folded, and put either in your wallet for going to the next bookstore or in the book if you have a copy of it. My reviewers are all top-notch, and my own forthcoming column is a good roadmap of some big things you can expect in that month. You can always go to the Big Canoe website. I leave the link down on every video, and subscribe to Big Canoe News. $30 a year will get you 12 issues, 12 big, full, colorful issues. And as you saw from that Project Chimp article, it's not all pumpkin growing contests for the local community. There's lots and lots of stuff. Two big separate pull-out sections for news, two big pull-out sections for living arts, and a book section at the back of the news section. That is the best, certainly within earshot. So I just thought I'd mention that. I'm happy to get the TLS, of course, although they're a little bit brainy for me. They've never taken anything. They would never run out. I don't think they would never run anything from me. I have asked in the past. I've certainly sung their praises more than anyone currently living. But that's not the same thing as them opening a berth for me. I do all right with berths on my own. I'm a little bit more of a junkyard dog than I am an itinerant scholar, so probably I'm not their right kind of reviewer, although it would make my day. If they took a book pitch from me, it would make my day. But in addition to the TLS, which I love, and have loved forever, I loved it when it was the Lit Sup. It's also great to get two print newspapers in the mail that I have a connection with. I am the book reviewer for the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. Maybe not in the off-season, but I would like to. I certainly would like to. And I'm the book section editor of Big Canoe News, of Smoke Signals. I am a print newspaper, for pay, print newspaper book section editor. That's an incredible feeling. I haven't had that feeling in a long, long time. 2021 has brought me both of those things. In 2021, I am an active book reviewer, a very active book reviewer, a professional book reviewer. I do nothing else. Don't have an adjunct teaching gig, don't have a book deal, don't have anything like that. But I came into 2021 with that. But 2021 has added things to my bookish life. Two fantastic things. I am a book section editor. I'm a paid book section editor. And it's not just nothing. It's not a corner below the sports section. It's 2 full pages of books coverage without anything else. If somebody puts on a local production of The King and I don't have to cover it. It's just all books. There's that. And also, as I've mentioned on this channel, I don't have an example in front of me here, I'm also a book columnist again for the first time in over 40 years for a small town newspaper in Iowa. And the link for that is also down below, the Bedford Times Press, if you feel like they do paywall. So if you feel like getting that book column every week, in the mail, you will have to subscribe. It being Iowa, the subscription rates are not exorbitant. But anyway, that was the mail, and now we have books. And one of the things here is an enormous box. And it's not from one of you. It's not one of you misbehaving and breaking rule number 1. And it's also not from just anybody. It's an enormous box from my favorite non-Penguin publisher, W.W. Norton. Cannot for the life of me figure out what's in there. We'll find out together. But the first one is just priority mail envelope. So this might be one of you misbehaving. Let's see what we have here. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, this is a double. We got a copy of this just the other day. This is a translated work. This is Fabio Marabito, translated by Curtis Bauer. And it's called Home Reading Service. A young man who's totally aimless, has no joy, no real fulfillment, no real purpose in life, who's doing community service where he reads books to people. And it starts to bring meaning to his life. I don't have a pub sheet, but let's read it just again in case you missed it the first time. After an accident, or the misfortune of his cancer-ridden father's caretaker, Celeste, calls it, Eduardo is sentenced to a year of community service reading to the elderly and disabled. Stripped of his driver's license and feeling impotent as he nears 35, he leads a dull, lonely life, chatting occasionally with the waitresses of the local restaurant or walking the streets of his hometown. Once a quiet town known for its lush gardens and swimming pools, the city of eternal spring is now plagued by robberies, kidnappings, and other myriad forms of violence bred by drug trafficking. At first, Eduardo seems unable to connect. He movingly reads the words of Dostoevsky, Henry James, Daphne du Maurier, and more, but doesn't truly understand them. His eccentric listeners sense his detachment. Then Eduardo comes across a poem his father had copied by the Mexican poet Isabel Freire, and it affects him as no literature has before. Through these fascinating characters, like the practical, quick-witted Celeste, who intuitively grasps poetry even though she never learned to read, the author shows how art can help to rediscover meaning in a corrupt, unequal society. And not just any art, but books. Read it. I haven't got to this yet because I don't have a sheet on this, but I think this is coming out. Yeah, this is out already. This was a November release. I'm pretty sure this is out already. I haven't got to it yet. I meant to get to it actually last night. But a big fat book on World War II took over, just booted it aside. And when I was done with the big fat book on World War II, I thought, well, okay, but you should read something else. You shouldn't just read World War II. And there was a murder mystery, one of those Penguin classic crime murder mysteries, just sitting there waiting for me. So I didn't get to this new translation, which is actually my bailiwick, is new books. I didn't get to it. I just ignored it. But I will get to it. I will get to it. It'll be another sultry summer evening tonight. Windows open. Once the sun goes down, then you'll get the reflective heating. The house will start to vent the heat that it's accumulated during the day. That always makes that particular hour more sultry than usual. It's always in that hour that I once again regret removing the AC units from the windows here. I thought I might have a couple of warm days in September. It never crossed my mind that I would have warm days in October. And never in my wildest nightmares did I think that I would be thinking about an AC unit in mid-November in Boston. I won't make that mistake ever again. It's clear to me that Boston is never going to have an actual winter again. It's clear to me that we have lost a season. And in a little while, maybe 5 years, 6 years, all of the vegetation, the famous foliage change, the fall foliage change in New England, will have learned that. And so we will lose a second season. We will lose autumn as well. And it'll just be summer mixed with superstorms. But I will know better. I will know better next year. Next year, when I have the boys install the AC units, I'll have them tape line them, make sure they're nice and steady, and they will just stay there. They will just be a permanent part here. I won't be the seasonal thing of taking them out anymore. But anyway, I rescued these packages from the porch. They were hot to the touch. But let's see what we have here. We've got lots of boxes, so I'm hoping that we have lots of finished copies. I'd like some finished copies for November. Oh my, okay, great. Yes, we have a finished copy. This is for January though, so I won't be dealing with it right away. This is for January 18th. This is by Michael Cholby and is called Grief: A Philosophical Guide. As you can see, I am fighting the light. I am hiding from the light. It's chasing me around the apartment. I'm clearly not going to be able to get this video done with the light the way it is. It's clearly going to chase me right out of this corner. Well, we'll keep moving around. It'll be action-packed. let's see here. Experiencing grief at the death of a person we love or who matters to us, as universal as it is painful, is central to the human condition. Surprisingly, however, philosophers have rarely examined grief in any depth. In his new book, Grief, the author presents a groundbreaking philosophical examination of this complex emotional event, offering valuable new insights about what grief is, whom we grieve, and how grief can ultimately lead us to a richer self-understanding and a fuller realization of our humanity. Well, it's a work of philosophy, so it is almost duty-bound to be flapdoodle, but certainly I would prefer that it not be. That would be great if it weren't. I know this subject really, really well. I know the subject of grief, and especially deep grief, really, really well. and I'd love to read something really, interesting and moving. Let's see what we can do here. Let's see if we can get out of the sunlight. Just for a little while. It won't be permanent, but let's give it a try. There, is that a little better? A little bit dimmer? It won't be dim for more than a few minutes. So let's move on to the next one. I would love it if, as I was saying, I would love it if this grief book weren't philosophical flapdoodle. I would love it if it were not talking about the griefness of grieving, but rather just talking about grief. That would be fantastic. I'm not expecting it. So what is this next one? Feels like another finished copy. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, is this an omen? Am I in for a bad year? This is the second copy of Grief. All right, so immediately when this happens, I mean, this is just a second copy hard on the heels of the first one. So immediately when this happens, I want to know if any of you are interested in getting a copy of this for me to send it to you. In the U.S. In the U.S. only. The U.S. recently degraded its postal services. Everything is worse, slower, and much more expensive. So I don't want to mail a whim book at $100 just for the mailing to rural New Zealand or wherever you're from. But if you're in America and this interests you, either philosophy, God help us, or the subject of grief, I have a second copy of this, just plain, a straight up duplicate. So the books are now behind me and the light, we have storage. We can do this. So that was just double. That's a little bit anticlimactic. But we do now have the big box. A big box from W.W. Norton. So what could this be? I mean, it's tall and heavy. I believe I did a little bit of informal calculus with their catalogs, and I don't think this is a single book. I don't think it is. I don't think it could be. Unless the publicist put a bunch of stuff together. That's what this has to be. This has to be just a bunch of things. Oh, it is. What is this? It's a whole bunch of books. Oh my, what have we got here? What have we got here? Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, please tell me you gave me your email. You did. Oh my. Oh my. I am going to write you the most fawning email. I swear, book publicists are the nicest people. Incredible. What we have here is a stack of Norton critical editions. Not just one or two, but a whole stack of them. The first one being Mrs. Dalloway, which just recently came into the purview of reprint houses. So they wouldn't have been able to do Mrs. Dalloway before this year. This is edited by Anne Fernald, whose name I know. How do I know Anne Fernald? Hannah would know. Hannah would be able to tell me right off the top of her head. Who is Anne Fernald? Why do I know that name? I feel certain that, let's see, she did Professor of English and Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Fordham University. Okay, she did a book on Virginia Woolf, Feminism and the Reader. I don't think I would have read that. Why do I know her name? I know her name. She's the editor of a textual edition of Mrs. Dalloway for Cambridge University Press. Is that their annotated edition? But I didn't get one from Cambridge. Her articles have appeared in Feminist Studies, Modern Fiction Studies, Guernica, Open Letters Monthly. Okay, that's how I know her name, because she's run pieces in the old journal that I used to help edit. Okay, that's how I know Anne Fernald's name, because she wrote pieces for Open Letters Monthly. All right. Mrs. Dalloway, in a Norton Critical Edition. Now, those of you who are maybe not familiar, maybe outside the country, the Norton Critical Editions give you the text, and then the texts are often annotated. This one is. This one has notes at the bottom. You're not going to be able to tell because the light is chasing me around the room, but I don't have any place else to go. the only way I can get around this is to film in the gloaming. Is to film when the sun has risen above the horizon but has not crested the tree ridge. Between 7 and 7:16. That would mean 16 minutes of video every day. That's not enough time even to say hello and make fun of people. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to be able to show you the books. But you see, if I do this, already the light is starting to kill it. You get annotated editions of the text, yes, but in the back of the book you get essays. All kinds of essays. If the work is historical, you'll get historical grounding, like if, for instance, it's a Norton critical Shakespeare of the history plays, or even the tragedies like King Lear or Macbeth, you'll get the histories that it's derived, that Shakespeare was using, and a ton of other things, ranging over centuries, depending on how old the work it is. Then the next one we have is the Norton critical Great Gatsby. Likewise, a book that only just recently came in the purview of that only just recently came into public domain, so that Norton critical could do it. Just like Mrs. Dalloway, which is why there was 1 month in 2021 where all of a sudden there were 50 editions of The Great Gatsby that you could buy instead of just one. So this is The Great Gatsby, edited by David Allworth, and you're going to get the text, but then a ton of criticism. It's a big, thick book on The Great Gatsby. Fantastic. I have a whole shelf of Norton critical editions. I'm clearly going to need another shelf. What else have we got here? Oh, very good, very good. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. No doubt pushed up in their schedule by the very favorable critical reception of the movie. There was a movie version of this with Dev Patel? I forget who the young man who played Sir Gawain, and I really should remember because he has never disappointed me in any dramatic performances. I have to know his name. I keep thinking of him as Neil Sandpat from The Newsroom. That's wrong. He did. I mean, that's a great role of his, but he does have a name of his own. Anyway, this is the Old English poem. This is translated by Marie Boroff. It'll be the Old English poem, and then a ton of critical essays, critical reception, whatnot. Fantastic. The one worry that I always have about the back part of Norton critical editions in the 21st century, specifically after 2016, is that they will be enormously, just grotesquely politicized. And that the editorial board at Norton Critical will take up a work like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight or Beowulf and say, well, I know that in the previous 10 editions of this work, the criticism at the back of the volume featured great medievalists from the 20th century, all of whom were white men. So we're going to junk all of them. And maybe somebody in the room raised their hand and said, well, what about the worth of their work? Doesn't matter. We're ticking boxes now. And I don't know if Norton does that. And I'm gonna, that would be my main worry with the essays in the back of any of these volumes. Norton critical editions are meant for schools. They are bound for an academic setting. And academic settings in the United States, anyway, are lunatic asylums of just rampant, out of control, too online blue checkmark politics, Twitter politics. They're just lunatic asylums of that. There's almost nothing else that happens in them. And these books are meant for them. So, even if Norton doesn't have those weird, eccentric positions themselves, they're still going to be sitting together in a room thinking, okay, well, we're making an edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it is mostly for academic consumption. So when we get to the back of the book and we're presenting you with essays and reflections and historical considerations about the work, every single piece in the back of the book had better be written by a woman. And if any are written by men, well, somebody's going to have to troll through Facebook because we don't want any straight men. Find out, look at their pictures, look at their photo at their wedding anniversaries, find out. We need to know that ahead of time, even though it's completely irrelevant to scholarship, because otherwise the students won't read the book and highlight from it, they'll burn it. So I don't know if that's true. I'll have to check and see. Certainly, I hold nothing but esteem for Anne Fernald's scholarship. That is so. So what else have we got here? I'm interested to know. Okay, here we have Oedipus the King by Sophocles, the Oedipus Rex, what many ancients thought was the perfect tragedy. And here we have a translated introduction by Emily Wilson, who some of you may know for her translation of Homer. That's fantastic. I don't think I've ever read her translation of Sophocles. I'm naturally wondering now. I'm naturally wondering now about the essays in the back, but I really shouldn't. I probably shouldn't do that. I probably shouldn't concentrate on that. But for instance, you've got the text of Oedipus Tyrannus, and then you've got comparative sources. So you have something from Homer, something from Euripides, something from Thucydides, Sophocles, Aristotle, Pseudo-Apollodorus, Seneca. Fantastic. Just fantastic. Unfortunately, in comparative sources, you have Homer, Euripides, Thucydides, Sophocles, Aristotle, Pseudo-Apollodorus, Seneca, and then the very last thing in that section is Rita Dove, who, as far as I know, was born in the 20th century. And it's that kind of sort of wooden virtue signaling that I'm worried about in any product that has any even tangential connection with American academia, which is stuffed to the gills with sexist, racist, fascists who would rather kill you than disagree with you. but these need not do that. I'll have to check and see. I'm sure that if there is any move in that direction, it will certainly, as an unexpected byproduct, present me with the scholarship of a lot of people I haven't read, which is great. I'll take that, absolutely. Oh boy, it's like this whole setup was made for me. I know it isn't, it's just their next raft of Norton Criticals, but it feels like it is. This is Huck Finn. A lovely edition of Huck Finn. This is edited by Thomas Cooley, so you'll get the text of Huck Finn and then an enormous amount of other stuff. Oh, how incredible. Just incredible. There's old criticism, William Dean Howells, Thomas Sargent Perry, Leo Marx, Ralph Ellison, but also modern views, modern criticism as well, including a piece by the editor. I can't run from the light forever, so for the last few of these, I'm probably going to have to just describe them verbally and tell you to go look for them on Google, because I'm not going to be able to run from the light forever. This is just ridiculous. But that is fantastic. I mean, what have we had so far? We've had Oedipus Rex, we've had Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, The Great Gatsby I like, but I don't love, and Mrs. Dalloway, which I love. It's like this batch was made for me. I don't know what's coming next. Is it the Iliad? Is there a Norton Critical of the Iliad? Don't know that I remember there being one. What is the next one here? Frankenstein. And look at the size of this thing. So you get Frankenstein, but then you get a huge amount of criticism. Just half the book will be, you can't see it in this light, but half the book will be, this for instance, I haven't examined it in depth, but I bet that this is a comparison, side-by-side comparison. I bet this is a side-by-side comparison of the two editions. Oh, it is, yes. You can see. It's a side-by-side comparison of the two editions. How incredible is that? Right there in the book, with the book. It's just amazing. So you've got Frankenstein and a ton of criticism. I don't know. I put these down face down, so I have no idea what the next one is. What can we guess that it is? It's not Homer, because I don't think Norton Critical does the Iliad. They wouldn't do Rudyard Kipling at all. Doesn't matter how important he is. He's got Twitter stink on him, so you can't study him in school. And you can be expelled if you try. Can't be Tale of Genji, because they already do that. I am blurbed on the Norton Critical Tale of Genji. But this last one's got to be another book that I love. What are the chances that this is going to be E.E. Cummings or something like that? Well, let's see what it is. Oh no, well, those of you who follow me on Instagram are going to know I do not need this book, but I will definitely take it. It's Dracula. Oh my, I have another edition of Dracula. So this week alone, I have acquired 2 new editions of Dracula. This is the new Norton Critical edition of Dracula. There is Nosferatu on the cover there. You can't make it out because the light is following me around the room. This is edited by John Edgar Browning and David Skal. David Skal did a biography of Bram Stoker. Called Something in the Blood. And David Edgar Browning has done what? A ton of stuff on horror, zombies, and also vampires. Okay, so this is really, really good hands. Fantastic. So you get the text of Dracula. Then you get immediate reviews. So the Liverpool Daily Post, the Athenaeum, the Brooklyn Daily Eagles, the editors of Norton Critical do the legwork to go and find how the book was originally received. Oh my God, that segment in the Norton Critical Moby Dick, any Norton Critical Moby Dick, is so amazing to read. If you can find that sort of thing, it's great to read. So you have immediate reviews and reactions. Then you have the section on dramatic and film variations. On a book about Dracula, you could scarcely not have a section like that. Including Vincent Canby's review of Francis Ford Coppola's movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's going to be fun. I read it, I'm sure, but that's going to be fun to reread. And then a huge number of contemporary things. Just fantastic. How incredible. Dracula. Again, another edition of Dracula. This has got to make 15. But oh, wow. All right, well, I owe the folks at Norton Critical Edition a whoppingly enthusiastic email. And I want to stress, you can't see it. You can't see it. No good doing a Steve pyramid if you can't see what I'm talking about, right? There's no good doing that if you can't see what I'm talking about. Can you see it now? Barely? No? There clearly won't be any other videos today. I had 5 of them to do today, but I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to fight with the light. I need to come up with a solution to this. And I'm not going to drape mourning curtains over every window. I'm not going to do that. I don't remember this being a problem last year. I'm just going to have to figure out a way. But we can do a Steve pyramid. At least you can see it. So we have Dracula. We have Frankenstein. There wasn't a dud in the bunch here. We have Oedipus the King. We have Huck Finn. We have Sir Gawain in The Green Knight. We have The Great Gatsby. Good Lord, I only have one edition of The Great Gatsby. Now I have the best edition in the world. And finally, Mrs. Dalloway. Just a block of Norton Critical Editions, of new Norton Critical Editions. How incredible. How absolutely incredible. I want to stress here, I know I've been saying academia, academia, academia throughout this discussion, but these things are great to read. Just you, as a reader, you will scarcely do better. I always say, you know, when you're tackling a work that's historical or quasi-historical, I always tell you, when you first stop out to be Wikipedia, brush up on the basic world, the scenario, the author. Well, if you don't want to do that, or if you don't carry Wikipedia around with you, this is the other way to do that. This is the best way to do that. Because you can jot down your marginality, you can take, and it'll have a ton more sources, a ton more references for further reading than any Wikipedia page will. These things are, in other words, they're made, I think, for students, but they are very much for the modern reader, very much for the general interest reader, because you get the whole thing. You don't just get dumped into the work. You get the work plus an introduction, plus footnotes, plus context. Not only contemporary context to it, but also context in the present day. Amazing. Amazing to get the whole batch of them here at once. Definitely want to hold on to that, because I want to email. Then we have Grief, a philosophical guide, and a double of that, so that if one of you wants this, feel free to let me know. And finally, Home Reading Service, which is itself, now that I think about it, also a double. So if you're interested, especially extra conveniently if it was the same person who's interested in both, that would be great. I can just send you both. So that's it. That is a very distracted mail. Sorry. I don't know what's happening here, and I don't know how to fix it. I'll have to come up with a way. But at least I got to show the important things, right? Which was a stack of Norton Critical Editions. How great that is. How fantastic that is. But also, periodicals. The Vineyard Gazette, I don't expect you to do much with, because they don't run reviews by me unless they have books. And other than that, it's all Vineyard local stuff. Smoke Signals, though, in Northern Georgia, Big Canoe News is a full-color, several-section monthly paper that deals with a lot of stuff and has plenty of interest for someone who doesn't live in the Big Canoe area, including a 2-page full-color book section edited by yours truly. So you got to see that before the sun wiped it all out. Now I'm going to fade. I'm going to try anyway. I will fade literally into the sunset, although it's the middle of the day. I can tell because it's getting really hot in this room. It's probably 80, 81 degrees outside, as you would expect the first week of November in Boston. It's going to be a scorcher all week long, so get your errands done early and take the dog out in shirt sleeves, shorts, and sandals. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this disastrous mail haul. Sorry for all the moving around. I will try to fix this problem, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.